into the Fantasy Playmakers Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at PopesFFH. Joined as always by my co-host, Ryan, who is at Mackie_FFB. How's it going, Ryan?
Not too bad, man. Just got done with my son's soccer game, son and daughter's soccer practice, and run a little behind, a little bit later than I thought I was going to, but we're doing all right. I'm excited for the show.
So you're saying I should add your son in fantasy soccer?
Ooh. Yeah.
Dynasty?
He's actually pretty sick with the ball. Last year not so hot, but this year he's kind of advanced over the year. I think it was COVID.
He's up and coming. So any fantasy soccer players out there,
Be on the lookout in 20 years.
But joining us tonight is a special guest, one of the best out there. It is Justin from Taking It to the Hizzy podcast. What is up, Justin?
Hey, not a whole lot. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the kind words. Ryan, awesome. Congrats on the youngster getting better with the ball, putting that time in the garage with COVID. I love it. That's awesome. With Take It to the Hizzy Fantasy Sports, we talk fantasy, gambling alike. Just get back and forth with some sports banner. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. I'm in a share group with you, and I love everything that you guys do. I think it's pretty sweet. So glad to have you on and talk about the NFC North here.
It's my home place. I'm a Bears fan, so I'm really ready to dive in. I'm excited.
Yeah, see, perfect. Lines up. Too bad we should have got Nick on here too. I think he's live right now though too. So could have had Bears love together. But let's talk about our breaking news here. I just wanted to mention, how many Popeyes biscuits did Kelvin Benjamin eat to make it to the tight end position?
Over under 4.5.
It has to be, right?
Something like that in a sitting.
More than the one or two you have on the show sheet. I know that.
More than one or two, you think? Does anybody know what he weighed in at? Like, was he actually that much bigger?
Enough for a tight end.
Let me see, because I'm actually kind of curious as to this.
All right, we'll start the show and you can look that up. Because basically, to sum of this story up, I talked to Justin before we got on. I mean, Justin, do you think he has any viableness to fantasy tight end landscape, or is this just kind of
No, I don't think he's going to make the roster. I don't think he's going to make the roster, let alone be fantasy relevant.
So you're saying I shouldn't have cut Travis Kelce for him? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, probably not. I would like to maybe get in on like some props with people with like Tim Tebow versus Kelvin Benjamin. You might be able to make a few bucks that way, or get somebody to shave their head, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Tebow last week. Another one that I don't know. I mean, I feel like, as sad as it sounds, I feel like Tebow has a better shot. I mean, at least he has an open depth chart in front of him to actually be somewhatly relevant, but I think that neither of them are. I know they're probably both trending on Sleeper right now, and I mean, I'm just staying away. I'll stay with. I'll take a shot on like Kenny Yeboah or somebody like that that's coming out at least this year. So. Mm-hmm. But let's dive right into this.
Jeremy, they got listed at 6'5", 245.
Yeah, we're going to need another 15 pounds down, buddy.
Yeah, he still seems a little chunky.
And he is the number one trending player on Sleeper.
I knew it. He had to be. That's just the go-to, Kerryon Johnson got signed. He was probably the number one, too, when he got cut and signed in Philly,
Mm-hmm.
It's just the go-to. I don't know. Everybody's looking for that next big thing. So
he's a big thing, all right. I'll say that.
Yeah, definitely a big thing. But before we dive in here, we got a little word from our sponsor here. Ryan, why don't you take over for that?
Yeah, we got King Fantasy Sports. Their draft guide is now available. Go check that out. Get the advantage over your league mates this draft season. Do the right preparation. Start your season off right. You'll get rankings, breakouts, busts, values, and sleepers. Have some funky signings for your leagues. Learn how to make your own projections. Stop sitting on the sidelines and buy it now. To the end of May, it's only $7.19, after which it's $8.99. Use our promo code Playmakers to get an additional 10% off. We are talking less than $10. Get everything you need in your arsenal to not just compete, but dominate in your leagues.
There you have it, folks. Get over to King Fantasy Sports. All right, let's just jump right into this NFC North breakdown. We're going to start off with the Detroit Lions. So let's start with the quarterback position. They bring over Jared Goff. Last year, he finished as QB 20. Do we think he's only super flex viable, or do we think that in a one quarterback league dynasty, he could have value still? Justin, why don't you lead us off?
In redraft single quarterback leagues, he's going to be a bench guy, right? Like, you're going to be able to get him in the back end of your draft, probably in the mid-teens as just your bench option. And I don't hate that. In super flex leagues, obviously he's going to be more viable. He'll probably be a starter, but you still don't want to reach on him, right? It's a very new situation. I like the offensive line in front of him. I think he has a lot of nice pieces, but he doesn't have like that elite receiver yet. Maybe they get in the mix for like a Julio Jones or something like that. As early as it is right now, he is not a guy I'm running to be my single quarterback league quarterback, by no means of the imagination.
I like that. I can agree with that. Ryan, how do you feel? Any chance you're using him as your starter in one QB?
No. He is strictly bye-week fill-in type guy for me right now. Like Justin said, they don't have any sort of elite option at the wide receiver position right now. There's kind of just a crapshoot on who's going to be their wide receiver one at the moment. But not only that, but Anthony Lynn coming in as offensive coordinator, he's never really had that top flight passing offense. I think the Chargers led the league in passing his first year as a head coach over there. And I think it was San Diego still at the time. But they had Phillip Rivers at the time. They had a lot of weapons. And Jared Goff isn't going to be mistaken for Phillip Rivers throwing the football anytime soon. And they don't have nearly the weapons that San Diego had back then. So as of right now, no, I would say he is not a redraft guy for me. Superflex QB2, QB3, sure, I'll take it. But other than that, no.
All right, let's move on to what we had. I put out a couple polls there ahead of this episode, and according to Twitter, this is their top dynasty asset for the Detroit Lions. We're going to move on to Deandre Swift. He finished as running back 18 in 2020, missed a couple games due to injury. Do we think he's top 12 locked and loaded, or do we have questions? Justin?
I think top 12 is kind of a big ask. I'm seeing him get drafted kind of like in the middle of the second round, and I still feel like that's a little rich. I just said I really like that offensive line. They, of course, grabbed Penei Sewell in the draft, which is great, but that offensive line is just looking really good in general. I know they have Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson. He's going to be a big piece. Frank Ragnow, Hala Pulivati Vaitai sounds like a great drink, but I don't know how he's going to work with that group. But the offensive line is looking really, really good. So I think you have to like that for Deandre Swift. But they also added Jamal Williams this year, and they also drafted Jamar Jefferson. So I do also see those guys kind of getting a little bit of that workload, because I think they do want to protect Jared Goff. And I really feel like they're going to lean on that run game, because just look at their receivers. I'm sure we'll get to them here in a minute, but they don't have any big threats right now. So a lot of people are making the assumption, Swift is going to catch a lot of passes. He's going to get a lot of usage. Yeah, that's kind of like a big focus right now in just social media and fantasy community alike. But I still feel like there's like that option or availability for him to just not progress like we assume he's going to. So right now, where I see him going like high in the second round, I think is a little bit rich. But I think in some drafts you're going to be able to get him at value at maybe like the third or fourth round, and I'm diving in at that space for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of led into what I wanted to talk about a little bit next, which was Jamal Williams. Like, I feel like I agree with that. And for me, I know that's where you're seeing him go, but currently DLF has him as his average ADP is 8.5. So he's going in a one quarterback league. He's at 8.5. So if you're talking one quarterback, would you still be in on him at the 8th pick or 9th pick?
No, I would not. At the 8th or 9th pick, I'm getting into DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs territory. If all of these running backs took a big run.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about he's around guys like Justin Jefferson, Cam Akers, Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb, Hill, Chubb, and Dobbins. That's your top 14. Devontae Adams is at 15 somehow. So I agree. I think that we aren't necessarily going to say that he's locked in at 12. I think that there's a lot of guys coming back that people tend to forget about at this current moment. Like you're getting CMC back, you're getting Barkley back. Chubb missed time last year. I think that for even any of these guys that are these second-year running backs, top 12 is a hard ask at the current moment, the way the landscape goes. Ryan, do you have anything to add on DeAndre Swift?
No, I do like him as a dynasty asset just because he's so young, and I feel like he will get a decent workload. But I feel like people are overblowing the reception usage that he might get, because I know like Dan Campbell. I think it was Dan Campbell that said they wanted to use him in like that Kamara type role. But you don't sign Jamal Williams, who had 35 targets and 31 catches, to bring him in and just have him sit the bench and do nothing. Like, he's going to come in and be a contributor on third down. He's not going to just – and he can run the ball well. He's effective on the ground as well. So I think he's going to spell Swift a little bit more than people are probably hoping for as dynasty owners or redraft owners. So top 12, yeah, it's – I mean, it could happen if they do decide in training camp, hey, he's just clearly – flat out better and we need him on the field all 3 downs. Sure, I could see that, but if they don't decide that and they say that Jamal Williams needs to be on the field from time to time at least, then no, he's not going to be top 12 unless they start splitting him out like they talked about. They talked about splitting him out at the slot too, so which could very well be the case.
So let's go just a real quick question. Which one you'd rather have? No explanation, just one word. Deandre Swift, Cam Akers. Both NFC running backs, both kind of murky running back scenarios.
Cam Akers, hands down.
Brian? Interesting. I think I don't know. I might agree with you, but I kind of like Swift. I liked Swift last year, so that's a tough one for me personally. But obviously, the other two agree with Akers, so maybe
in the
I'm
last
wrong.
Mock draft that I did, DeAndre Swift was the running back that went just ahead of Cam Akers, and he was sandwiched between Antonio Gibson and Akers. And I would also take Gibson over him as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like I would take Gibson over those two. That's my personal opinion, and especially at his ADP. I mean, I did a couple startups, and I was getting Gibson 3rd, 4th round in Superflex, and I'm like, this just seems absurd. Like, after that main run, he's not even in the main run, and it's like, really, they have J.D. McKissick, and the only reason McKissick was really ever relevant was that he was getting the dump off passes, and now you got Ryan Fitzpatrick going to throw it down the field. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know how viable McKissick will be this year, but that's for another episode. So let's go with the wide receiver position, which Justin had alluded to, which is
tough,
scary. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
We have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was a productive receiver at USC, but what can we expect from him? You have Tyrell Williams, who's coming off of injuries, and I don't remember if he opted out or was hurt last year, but he was viable when he was in the Raiders for like 1 year. You have Quintez Cephas, who has poor draft capital, is pretty slow, but seems decent. And then you have Brashad Perryman, who did not do very well last year with the Jets. So who are we taking?
I have shares of Quintez Cephas. I will take any shares of Amon-Ra St. Brown. But beyond that, I am not interested in Tyrell Williams, who really didn't have a good season with the Raiders. His best season was with the Chargers, and he's been getting paid since then. I think it was like 69 catches, and I think he was very close, or maybe just over 1,000 yards or something like that. It was an explosive year for him, but even then he was playing as like a number 2 or number 3. And he's just been cashing checks since then. And obviously that connection with Anthony Lynn has now brought him to Detroit. Brashad Perriman is just a guy that just catches 30 passes a year, maybe a couple of touchdowns. I'm not excited about him. Other guys you might have there that people could be interested in, Geronimo Allison, Khalif Raymond, but none of these names are just jumping out at us. Quintez Cephas and Amon-Ra, anyone can get these guys at value. I would like to plant some flags with those guys. And I have with Quintez Cephas, I believe they cut Marvin Hall last year after like a 4-catch, 80-yard and a touchdown game because they just simply said, we like Quintez Cephas more. So I'm buying into that. I feel like he is going to be taking a step forward this year just based off of availability. Sometimes that production is just king. So if he's going to be the guy in the field with Amon-Ra, who, is kind of getting a little bit of talk already. He's lining up inside, outside the numbers in practice. Looks like he's going to be a versatile weapon for them. So those are the two guys that I'm willing to buy in at. You can get them for free. They're not going to cost you anything in your drafts at any certain point.
I love the Cephas take because I have a ton of him. He was cheap and he was great it was crazy. I mean, he was really their only rostered wide receiver, and in startups all from January till now, like you were still getting him way late, and it was crazy. Yep. So I hope that happens because I do like me some Quintez Cephas. Ryan, do you have anything to add on that murky wide receiver position?
It's bad.
No, I mean, Tyrell Williams has 4 straight seasons of 600 yards or more. 4 straight seasons, 15 yards per catch or more. So he's kind of like that deep threat guy, big body receiver that might be able to go up and get the ball a little bit for them. Because I don't really think they have that either. Other than that, Sure. Perryman's a field stretcher burner type guy. You can catch 20, 30-yard passes and run to the house if you let him open. But other than that, it's really difficult to see them doing much of anything from the wide receiver position currently constructed. I do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's tough, physical, good route runner. So I feel like him and Cephas are probably the two value targets for them, strictly because I think we already kind of know what we're going to get out of Tyrell Williams and Rashad Perryman. I just think that you know what they are, and if you're looking for depth deep in a draft, and you can't get the two other guys like Cephas and Amon-Ra, sure, take a shot if they're there at a value, but they're not something I'm targeting in redraft or anything like that by any means.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are guys that you can get in like the last round, second to last round of redraft leagues for certain. Something I kind of want to circle back to with Jared Goff here. If you look up Jared Goff's numbers, and really just the theme with him in general, everyone calls him the bus driver because everything is very well directed from Sean McVay's offense. And when he would get the ball out of his hands in under 2 seconds, his completion rating was about like 75% plus. When he holds onto the ball to 3 to 4 seconds, it goes down to like below 30% completion rate. And I think a lot of people are discounting him and these receivers because they're, everyone's predicting that that's not going to translate to the Lions. But I'm actually, zigging while everyone's zagging on something like that. I do want some of these guys like Cephas and Brown because I feel like they're still going to set Goff up for some success. They're going to build a playbook around that to still get the ball out of his hands quickly, whether it is running backs, these receivers, and then obviously we're going to lead into Hawkinson here. So I still feel like there is some upside for these receivers. We just don't know who it's going to be. It's just very tough to gauge right now this early.
Yeah, I like that. I'm on board with that. I agree. I think Anthony Lynn has always done a good job of effectively making the playbook work for what he has, because he did it in Buffalo where it was very run heavy scheme. Then when he landed in Los Angeles, he was definitely more pass heavy because that's just the way that it was. And I think that coming here now, he knows what he has in Goff, and he knows that they have a great talent in Deandre Swift. And I think that they're going to know, and they've seen what works for Goff. They did it with the Rams. They fed Gurley the ball, and then it was just play off that play action. Don't ask Goff to do too much. And he's a very successful quarterback. And I agree. I think that might be a route that they're going to take. But like you said, who's the wide receiver going to be? Is it going to be Cephas, or is it going to be Brown, or is it going to be Tyrell Williams or Perryman or Khalil? You know what I mean?
Someone that's not there. They make a trade for somebody.
Or even they have some undrafted guys who are pretty high. Some people were high on after the draft. Like a Jonathan Adams could make it, a Sage Surratt. Both of them are there. So who knows? It's an open room. And to me, though, I agree. I think it should be Cephas or Brown if you're looking for a wide receiver as far as dynasty goes.
No love for Danny and the Ratley?
Nah.
I was going to mention Jonathan Adams because we didn't talk about him during our wide receiver special there before the draft. And so I went back and looked at him, and I actually didn't mind him at all. Like, he's 6'2", 210, like strong hands, good at contested catches. I think climbs the ladder well. Like he's one of the undrafted free agents that probably will make the team because their receiving core is so just unknown. So he might be a guy that people want to throw on their taxi squad and just hope that he turns into something because of the just the crapshoot that is the receiving core.
I like that.
Yeah, I totally love that, especially because you can get them basically for free after your rookie draft, to tell you the truth. Most of mine, I've had 4 or 5 of them, and he's never been picked. So you can either grab him late in the 5th if you want to just secure that, or just wait, and you might be able to get him for free off waivers on that first run.
He had 141 catches, 1,900 yards, 17 touchdowns in 23 games the last 2 seasons in college. So he produced in college, so never know.
So you heard it here, folks. Ryan is fully endorsing Jonathan Adams as a Detroit line. If it goes south,
flag planted.
Yeah, if it goes south, just contact me and I'll find out his address and we'll send him hate mail. Just joking, Ryan. Anyways, let's move on to: are we going to get a Kittle breakout here for TJ Hawkinson? He finished tight end 5 last year. And I'd seen a tweet earlier in the week. I can't remember who it was from, so I do apologize that I'm stealing your tweet. But he is in a similar situation. Kittle, in the year that Kittle had his breakout, he's obviously going to be the most reliable, proven target in an offense for Jared Goff. The question is how close does he get to the top 3?
That's tough. I mean, that's a really tough ask right now because all signs point to him being kind of like the leading receiver here, right? Just based off of the year that we had last year, the touchdown volume was there. I'm expecting some regression in the touchdowns, but progression in the catches. So whatever that equates to, I don't know if we're necessarily seeing top 5 numbers. It's just so hard to say without seeing any games yet, not knowing the connection he's going to have with Jared Goff. That's really tough. But he was just a very touchdown reliant guy last year, and I had some shares of him, and I was just always waiting for him to cash in on the touchdown, and he did. But the volume was always typically low because of these other targets there. So I'm betting on touchdown, like I said, regression and progression on the catches. Whatever that equates to, top 5, top 10, I'll be in on it. Where he's going, 5th, 6th round, I don't hate that value.
I like it. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, my question is if we're going to see like a Tyler Higbee 4-game stretch from 2 years ago from Hawk, like if he gets into one of those stretches and that boosts him into the top 5, because then he's kind of guaranteed to be top 5, right? I mean, Higbee was, I don't know for sure, but he had to have been close to the top 5 just with that stretch alone, because it's just after the big 3, I mean, it's just kind of who can score the most touchdowns at the position. Like Robert Tunion was a tight end 5 or 6 last year. So I mean,
He was 4.
Okay,
I had
so
both
4.
of them.
So I mean, it's one of those things where like, yeah, he could be a top 5 guy if Jared Goff just falls in love with him and he starts targeting him like he did that 4-game stretch there. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility by any means, and he's still young, so it's not like he can't develop into something greater. And if they don't address his wide receiver, he kind of is their best weapon in the receiving game. So,
Yep.
And I'm going to actually use that as a perfect segue because we're going to go a little bit backwards with the Packers. So let's go to Robert Tunion. Let's discuss this.
Okay.
Is it a repeat or a regression that we expect? He was tight end 4 last year, but like Ryan had said, he was very touchdown dependent. In 7 games that he didn't score a touchdown, he was only double-digit PPR points once. So what do we think of Robert Tunion?
It's very tough with all of these guys because you need to tell me who's playing quarterback this year for the Packers. So let's just assume. Let's assume
it's Rogers for now.
Exactly. Let's say that he's the guy. I'm willing to kind of take him in that same space, but probably a few rounds after a guy like TJ Hawkinson, or maybe a round or 2 after maybe Kyle Pitts if he's still there, because I see them kind of going in that same space after like a run on like Dallas Goedert and some of those other guys ahead of him.
Oh, no, we lost him.
I'm not sure. Sorry, I wasn't checking at it. But, as far as like targets in that offense, I think that it's very friendly. He has a good relationship with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, we don't see any of those wide receivers overwhelming us. So I do feel like he will take a big step forward because he'll also come into the year as just the lead guy. So right out of the gate, he's going to be getting those snaps right away, and he's going to be just touching the field more. So I am looking for him to take a big step forward this year just based off of volume alone. Top 5, yeah, he's definitely got an opportunity. If he's playing alongside, reigning MVP Aaron Rodgers, right? So I absolutely love him this year. I'll dive into him anywhere in that space, round 6, 7, 8, anywhere in there. If I get him beyond that, it's gold. It's nothing but free money.
Interesting. I kind of almost feel not the same. I'm really not as high on Robert Tunion. And the only reason I have that is I just feel that he's obviously was their only other option at receiver. Lazard was hurt a lot. MVS is kind of just MVS. And I feel like he's very, like I said, he's very touchdown dependent. And I just don't know if I see that, especially with them now adding Amari Rogers, who I feel like they're going to use almost like at that Ty Montgomery role, or just like kind of very versatile. And I feel like he might take some of those like goal line touchdowns that Robert Tunion was getting. So I think that for me, I think where he's going, I mean, it's not a terrible spot, but I just feel like there's other receivers around him in startups that I would rather take than risk it with Robert Tunion. Like, I feel like I'd rather sit with like Logan Thomas, like 5 rounds later.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And who has just as equal opportunity, who finished 5 or 6 last year.
Well, I could make the argument against that too, because like the football team have just added weapons on weapons as well. Logan Thomas isn't going to necessarily get those like locked in looks because, and you kind of alluded it too with that a small bit of JD McKissick talk. JD McKissick absolutely will not get the same amount of volume this year catching because he doesn't have a 1.5-legged man throwing him the ball. There was just times where you just saw Alex Smith not really able to stand in and plant himself to deliver downfield. And that's where we were seeing Logan Thomas, J.D. McKissick, just kind of a nice little balance between the two. And he made it work to his own right. So I don't see that necessarily. I know where you're at though. Like there's plenty of guys even other than Logan Thomas. I'm a big guy on Irv Smith this year. We'll get to him a little bit later. Right. So there are definitely back end options. If I know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the guy, then I will take that shot on Rob Tunion just because they had that connection last year. They're building that chemistry and he will have that volume. More volume.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I can see that because even you're just, like I'm using Amari Rogers, which is really only one weapon. And your point with Logan Thomas is very true. I'm not necessarily sold on Logan Thomas. I was just using him as an example, but I get it. And that's the same basis that I'm using to fight against Robert Tunion. And I don't know. I mean, I very muchly feel like he could repeat it, but I also see that it could be just as easily that he's just back to tight end 10. And it's just crazy how the landscape is that it's really, I mean, if he doesn't get the touchdowns that he was getting last year, he was not viable in any way really for a tight end. So,
right. And there's just a lot of volatility at the position too. You could be sitting at tight end 14 for a couple of weeks and then just jump into the top 8 and like that, that's just how the tight end position works.
Yeah, and I mean, for example, even him, I mean, Robert Tunion last year had a 30-point game. He had a 3-touchdown game. And I mean, that's really what pushed him up there. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like he was sitting at tight end 4 all year. It's just like, he kind of was because I think that was like game 4 or something. But like games like that, that's just what pushed him up there, which is a very good argument for the people who on Twitter, who I guess I could say I'm kind of leaning towards, is like starting to use like points per game versus overall points to rank guys because some guys miss time, some don't. You know what I mean? Like, so you could argue CMC played one game, but like he was the top guy in points per game. So it's like he's coming back. Like, do you want CMC or you want Dalvin Cook? You know what I mean? Like, Cook scored more last year, but like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's an interesting argument. That's the way I'm going. Ryan, after your brief hiatus, do you how do you feel about Tunion? You have anything to add, or you think he's going to be a top 5 tight end again this year, or?
No, because I can't see him averaging a touchdown every 5 catches again this season. I just feel like his touchdowns were. I mean, he had 11 last year, and like you said, I think he had a 3-touchdown game, and like I said, one of those games puts you into the top 10 immediately. So I mean, if you even have another multi-touchdown game or 1 or 2 3-game stretch where you have another touchdown, like your top 5 is feasible with that type of production. So I just don't. I see a lot of touchdown regression for him because, like I said, I just don't see him averaging a touchdown every 5 catches again this season. Especially if Aaron Rodgers isn't there. If he's not there, there's no way it's going to happen.
I don't know if you were here or not, but that's where we're just going to assume with the Packers that Rodgers is here because it's too questionable at this moment. But let's just switch. We'll switch gears. We'll go back to the quarterbacks with that one. We're going to bounce around here with the Packers. But does Rodgers stay or does he go? Justin,
That's so tough. I mean, I on our show we've been talking about it for weeks. You've got Guntkus coming out saying, "Oh, we love Jordan Love, but he's not ready yet." We're willing to trade Aaron, but we don't need a quarterback in return. They signed Blake Bortles. They get Ben Kurt as another signing. So it seems like the signs are pointing to him moving, but then Matt LaFleur comes out and says, we're trying to keep Aaron Rodgers in the worst way possible. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to interpret that, I've seen some of like the quote unquote offers, the potential, moves that like Denver could make. I was telling you before the show, I like a nice swap with the Raiders. I would like seeing Derek Carr and him swapped if they're going to make a move, because we don't want to see, in my opinion, Jordan Love, Blake Bortles, or this Ben Kirk guy at the helm for these weapons that we're talking about. We're going to be bringing on Aaron Jones, Adams, Tunion, whoever it is. We don't want that as fantasy owners. So if they are going to move on from him and he's going to go somewhere, please get something in return. Please get a quarterback in return. Just somebody that can just make these guys viable. Because if not, these guys' stocks, Jones, Adams, Tunion, they're going to sink faster than Dogecoin on SNL. You know what I mean? Like they're just going to plummet. So yeah, if he's not there, I'll be staying away from these guys. But stay or go, I can't tell you.
That's the tough thing. I mean, that is literally the next question I was going to ask is like, what does this do if he leaves, what does this do to the likes of Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, Amari Rogers, and Tunion? Like you said, I mean, I think it's an instant plummet, but it's tough because they have the name. You know what I mean? Or even if you're already in a dynasty and you already rostered these guys, it's like, what do you do? Do you know what I mean? Now is your point.
I'm sorry.
Like, do you wait? Because if you have Rodgers, these guys are possibly top 5 in each position. Or
I think if Rodgers doesn't come back, you buy the rumor, you sell the news, right? So you're flipping these guys like that. Don't wait for something else to happen. Get moving on these guys if you're in dynasty or something like that. Obviously, most redraft leagues, you're not going to be getting to it till like around Labor Day, right? Or maybe a week or two before. So it's just a really tough situation.
Yeah, and it's dicey, and I don't think any of us like it, nor does probably Aaron Rodgers. But fantasy owners,
I drafted Aaron Rodgers in our dynasty, Jeremy. I grabbed him. He was my first quarterback. So this news is crazy to me. I was not happy about it.
I have in one of my home dynasties, the one guy has Deshaun Watson, Teddy Bridgewater, and I think Lamar Jackson. So he's like still got one, but like Lamar. It's like a super flex league, and he's like he just traded like his whole future for Deshaun Watson last year, and I was like, oof.
That's a bad situation.
Yeah, not good to be in. All right, let's go move on to the running backs here. So we got obviously Aaron Jones, and then it's AJ Dillon, and then my draft darling and Khalil Hill. Of these three, obviously it's Aaron Jones is the top guy. Do we think that Khalil Hill takes over the Jamal Williams role, or do we think AJ Dillon might get some of that work? Ryan, we'll start with you, seeing as we didn't talk about Rodgers with you.
I think Khalil Hill gets a little bit more run than a 7th round pick usually would. He had 77 catches in college, 73 catches the last 3 seasons in college. So, I mean, they drafted him to be that receiving back. I feel like I don't think they would have used a pick on him to not use him in that role that he was so efficient with at the college level. And Player Profiler has him most comparable to Alexander Madison, who I really like. So if he can be that, if as efficient as Madison on the ground, come training camp and OTAs and things like that, I feel like he might be able to get not quite the Jamal Williams treatment just because AJ Dillon is there and they do seem to like him. But I feel like as a 7th round pick, I mean, how much can you really expect from a 7th round pick? I feel like he will outperform what you would expect from him being the draft capital he received.
No, and I hope for that. So here's my question. This is the way that I look at it, and this is how I feel. Obviously, they waited till the 7th round to draft Khalil Hill. I don't know this, Justin. You might, because I know you looked up a little bit more. What is Jones's contract again?
3 years, isn't it?
Is it 3? I'm not 100% sure. That's what I'm asking. I honestly don't know.
I don't have the re-signs. I have the fresh signings from Green Bay's free agency. I don't have the re-signs up available. It was enough to keep him out of Miami.
So here's my question. Do we think that they took Khalil Hill that late on the basis that they think that either A, Jones is gone next year, and I don't know if they have an out, but whether it's a year or 2, and they're going to use AJ Dillon and Khalil Hill as like a 2-headed monster? Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're going to use, because obviously Aaron Jones is a very effective receiving back, which is what Khalil Hill would be. And AJ Dillon obviously is more of a ground game type runner. Right. So is it that we're not going to really see? I just don't know. I mean, I'm sure Khalil Hill has no purpose in most leagues this year at all. But my question is it a guy that's worth holding on to, hypothetically saying Aaron Jones goes down? Do you think his workload gets bigger with like a 2-headed monster with AJ Dillon and Khalil Hill?
Absolutely, it does. That's just because of Matt LaFleur is running this offense. He's very run heavy, loves using his running backs, and if Aaron Jones goes down, then Khalil Hill is definitely getting a lot of play just because his style is just opposite, like you said, of AJ Dillon, and they're going to use both of them. Very similar how we saw last year with Williams, or last 2 years with Williams and Jones, right? Especially when Matt LaFleur first came in, super run heavy to start, right? Everyone was ready to bury Aaron Rodgers until he put I think like 5 touchdowns on the Panthers a couple of years back. I think it was against like Kyle Allen. That game spoiled like a 13-game parlay for me. It was wild. But they've just been running. Obviously, they passed a little bit more last year. But if Aaron Jones goes down, then obviously his value is going to go up. To your ask about the years, it was 4 years, $48 million. And the only reason I would see Jones not being a Packer next year or any years is if Aaron Rodgers is gone. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's definitely something you could look at. I mean, if they do move on from Rodgers, there's a good chance they could move on from a lot of these guys like Devontae Adams or even Aaron Jones on the basis of just age, and they're just fully going to commit to a rebuild, possibly.
I think it's the opposite. I think these guys are just like, you guys screw the pooch, we're out of here. Like Aaron Jones is like, bro, I signed that contract on false pretenses. That my MVP was going to be here. I took down more money from other places to come back here and make a run. And now you're about to send our best player packing for nothing. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, we don't need a quarterback in return. Like it's just a wild situation. Packers need to get it together. As a Bears fan, I love watching the house burn across the street. I could care less. But as a football fan, like just show some respect to good players. Like, what are you doing? This is a team that could have drafted Justin Jefferson last year. Like, come on. Love killing me.
Don't get me started.
I hear you.
Let's move on to the wide receivers though. Obviously, we have the top Twitter fantasy asset, which is Davante Adams. And then you have Amari Rogers, who's obviously the new shiny toy there. We still have Allen Lazard and MVS. Ryan, aside from Adams, who do we want in this offense? Is it Amari Rogers, Lazard, or MVS? Justin, you go.
Definitely Amari Rogers for me. My Wi-Fi is acting up tonight for some reason. I don't know why, but
unacceptable.
I want Rodgers over all those guys. For me personally, I mean they used a third round pick on him, and I think that's the highest they've taken a receiver, and I don't even know how long. But 500 yards in college when given 50 or more targets, which he only had 2 seasons of that, but so he's productive when given the chance. I really like his ability to separate and get open, and he's going to play the slot for them. I feel like they're probably going to use MVS on the outside and put him in the slot. So with how they only passed 54% of the time, which is kind of weird because of having Aaron Rodgers, but they have a really good balanced attack. So I can understand that, but somebody's got to get the ball. Somebody outside of Davante Adams has to get the ball because teams were able to just straight up double team him. And he was still able to be effective, obviously, but it's because Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. So for me, it's Rodgers. And then if you want to take a flyer on MVS, I can understand that because he's the number 2 and he has some deep threat potential. So yeah, for me, it's Rodgers and then MVS, and if you need to.
I'm actually going to go a little opposite there. I'm going to go Allen Lazard. I think I read all over the place that he's just the guy that Aaron Rodgers just trusts outside of Davante Adams. But every one of those guys we listed, they're going the back end of your drafts, guys. Like you can get these just take your pick, And what I also like to do is just take 2. The years that we saw MVS and Geronimo Allison going at each other, earning more snaps, earning more playing time, give me both of them at the end of my draft. We'll just see what works and drop what doesn't, right?
Yeah, and that's a great strategy. That's a good little tidbit there. He's going to help you guys win some leagues there. But yeah, sure. I agree. I kind of agree with Justin, Ryan, not to go against you, but I agree. I think Lazard's kind of proven that he's really the second option. And I think we saw a lot of MVS last year because Lazard got hurt. Because prior to Lazard getting hurt, he was truthfully the second option. It was him and Davante Adams. But I agree. I really want Amari Rogers if I can get him, especially in rookie drafts. He's going just about the end of the second, early third. And I just feel like I had said that's where I was with Tunion. I feel like they're going to use him a lot more versatile than just a slot receiver. And I think that he might start to steal some touchdown production, possibly even from Aaron Jones. Depending on the formations, we're not sure how LaFleur is going to use him. But if he does get used in that versatile role, like a Ty Montgomery or something, that he might start digging into some of these guys' touchdown production. And that's what touchdowns are king in fantasy. And if he can get, I don't know, if he gets 5 or 6 in the year, he could definitely finish close to the top 24. Let's move on.
You got some real quick, Jeremy. How do we feel about Devin Funchess coming back after opting out?
Who? No, I'm just kidding.
Who's that?
Nothing for me. Nothing for me. Sorry. Yeah, kind of a bigger body guy, almost like a wide receiver, kind of like that can transition to like tight end. To be perfectly honest with you, just not someone that I'm interested in investing in fantasy. Definitely early waiver guy. If for some reason he starts going off, that's my ceiling for him.
So how many Popeyes biscuits does it take for him to move to tight end, Ryan?
Yeah, right.
Probably 20 or so.
He needs a little more, right? He needs a handful more than Kelvin Benjamin, I'd say.
All right, let's move.
What? That's not very many. That's not very many if it's going to be more Benjamin.
Let's move on to the Minnesota Vikings. So we have the Vikings. We obviously know they have Kirk Cousins. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say he's the most undervalued super flex constant top 15 quarterback that I've ever seen because I have a lot of him. And for some reason, nobody wants Kirk Cousins. And I don't know why. This guy's just constantly I think the last 2 years he's been top 15. At Superflex, how much more do you want? You ask in some of my leagues, I'm like, just give me a late first this year. And everybody's like, no, how about a third? And I'm like, what are you doing? It's Kirk Cousins. What is going on here? It's a home league, so they don't know. So that's really not valuable. But Justin, how do we feel about Kirk Cousins?
I don't mind him in Superflex whatsoever. Kind of your point, he is a very valuable piece in that format, but you still have to ride the waves. You still have to ride the highs and lows of Kirk Cousins. We have seen his receivers come out and blatantly say, this guy is just not taking any risks. You see him getting into arguments with Thielen on the sideline saying, hey, I'm not making the throw if I don't see it. Well, there's plenty of quarterbacks that do that. Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, there's plenty of guys out there that just know where to get it and they don't need to see. They can just get it downfield. So you still have to ride the highs and lows, and then you also have to ride just the Dalvin Cook, progression or regression. Are they going to use him more? Are they going to get him more involved in the passing game? I like him in Superflex. Not a guy that I'm going to be drafting heavy in redraft leagues, but yeah, he's a guy that I'll take as my second, third guy, just constantly rotating in and out, riding the hot hand, matchups, etc.
Yeah, and I love the way that he basically goes. He's super late in drafts. So you can say take your top quarterback at 1, and then you can get those rookies, or you can get those running backs, you can get those wide receivers, and then middle of the draft, you're able to just grab onto a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr. And I think Cousins, to me, just like I said, I just feel like he's the most underrated super flex asset out there because it just seems like nobody wants him, but yet he constantly is that top 15 quarterback. And Ryan, let's move on to Dalvin Cook. Where does Dalvin Cook finish this year? Is he a top 2 in PPR? Is he top 5? Or do you expect him to fall off drastically?
I have to have him locked in at top 5. The way they use him, 3 down back. He's constantly having the ball in hmy hands. And then they lost Gary Kubiak as their offensive coordinator, obviously, and they brought his son on. So oh my God, why am I blanking on their head coach's name?
Zimmer.
Yeah, he specifically said that he wanted to keep that same style of offense in place when Gary Kubiak left. So they promoted Clint to offensive coordinator from, I think it was his QB coach, something like that. So that offense is going to stay relatively the same. And they got enough improvement at the offensive line, drafting Darrisaw in the first round. So that solidifies their tackle position. And he was the second highest rated tackle according to PFF last season. So he solidifies that tackle position for him, gives him a little bit more room to wiggle, I think. And they only pass on 52% of their plays. So they rely on him a lot. So yeah, he's top 5 for me for sure, locked and loaded.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I grabbed every bit of him last year. I think I had 3 shares of Dalvin Cook and just rolled at him. And they also added Wyatt Davis in the 3rd round too. So a lot of help on the way. I love it.
Yeah, and I agree. Honestly, I did a startup. I got Dalvin Cook at 2.6 because people are crazy on rookie running backs. It was a super flex startup, but I wanted to go with that J.K. Dobbins because he was still there, but I'm just I can't pass a Dalvin Cook at 2.6. I think he's going to be. Yeah, he's going to be a huge part of this offense. Just signed a pretty big deal. And last year, he was able to stay healthy. So that injury concern is obviously still there, but it obviously proves that he still can stay relatively healthy. So let's go on to the receiving core here for the Minnesota Vikings. We have Justin Jefferson, who finished wide receiver 6 last year, and then Thielen, who's wide receiver 10. And then we're going to toss it in and talk about Irv Smith Jr. as well. So do we think all 3 of them can finish top 10 in their positions again this season? Well, Irv Smith would be a new ad, but
yeah, I'm going to say no to Ryan's point about just the lack of passing. Like if there was to be a push forward there with the rushing versus passing attack, then sure, why wouldn't there be, right? But we saw last year the tight end position kind of get underutilized for the Vikings. So I think top 10 is still a little bit rich for Irv Smith, but he's still a guy that I want to grab a bunch of in Dynasty just because he's getting that opportunity, going to be playing more snaps. With Jefferson and Thielen, why not? I mean, realistically, are you going to bet on regression from Justin Jefferson? That's really all you're looking at. I think Thielen will constantly be there just because Kirk Cousins has just always leaned on him, and he's very reliable when healthy.
Ryan, how do you feel about any of these three?
Well, obviously, I love Jefferson. I feel like everybody loves Jefferson at this point. Thielen is just that steady, consistent, just always there for them when they need him. Just really reliable. Irv Smith is interesting for me because I feel like people are super high on him because Kyle Rudolph left. But Tyler Conklin actually out-targeted him the last 4 games of the season last year after Rudolph went down. So 21-20, which I know isn't a lot, but he actually might have a little bit of sleeper potential to be a little bit more involved than people might think. And they drafted a 6'7", 250-pound tight end in like the 7th round, or maybe he was an undrafted free agent. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they did bring another tight end in that was a huge human being. I mean, I think I do have it. Zach Davidson out of Central Missouri, round 5. He's 6'7", 245, and he was super productive in college for a tight end. In 2019, 40 catches, 894 yards, 15 touchdowns, 22 yards per catch. So, I mean, obviously rookie tight ends aren't what you're looking for, but Irv Smith might not be the locked and loaded type or top 10 tight end like people are making him out to be right now.
Agreed.
Interesting. So do we think that Justin Jefferson has supplanted Thielen as far as obviously statistically and I guess as you'd want to own as a dynasty asset, but do we think that Kirk Cousins still prefers Thielen? I feel like Thielen still was pretty much more so Mr. Reliable. Do you think Justin Jefferson can take that over from Thielen this year? Or do we think that Thielen still has enough viability to be top 10 again? Or do we think he's going to regress into like that top 15, top 20 range?
Well, it's got to be tough to hit over 1,400 yards. That's a tough benchmark to just set, the bar, right out of the gate. I do believe Justin Jefferson is going to be very relevant to the wide receiver 1 conversation, not so much Thielen, but come the end of the year, I think both of them are going to be really close regardless. Justin Jefferson being top 5 wide receiver on the year, again, it's difficult because you'll have some guys also coming back from injuries. We don't know what's going to be the case with the rushing versus passing attack there. I'm betting on some regression on the yardage, but I'm betting on more efficiency in the pass catching. So what was it? 88 catches on 125 targets. I'm expecting better from Justin Jefferson in that regard, but not necessarily going over the top of 1,400 receiving yards. I think that's a bit of a tall ask. Before we move on, I just want to ask one question between the two, kind of like an ADP battle. At the Hizzy, we always do like trust or bust between 2 guys that are kind of close to each other, but they're on like the same team. Last year, our big piece was Tyler Lockett versus DK Metcalf because they were going almost exactly in the same round in redraft leagues. So in the last mock that I did, Justin Jefferson is going in round 2, which could be interpreted as a little rich right now. Or would you rather have Adam Thielen in round 5?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'm going to go with Thielen personally because I'm a value chaser. I think Justin Jefferson is going too high for what he is. And the only reason I will say that is I think there is going to be regression. I agree with you. I think the 1,400 yards that he put out was phenomenal for a rookie. But in an offense that's run heavy and that's led by Kirk Cousins, back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons is a little excessive. And I still think Thielen's the touchdown guy. I think when they get in the red zone, Kirk Cousins still likes that. So I agree. I think Jefferson's going so high. I think everybody's very just hyped about what he did last year, which is justifiable. I mean, he came out, he was amazing. But I agree, and I know I saw Mike Bauer on there. He agrees too. I think I have it on here too. That I mean, his ADP is wide receiver 35 for Thielen right now, and I think that's in a startup. That's crazy. I mean, I know he's 30, but like you should be building to win within a year or two, and he's still going to be there. And that's just
exactly
for a possibly top 15 wide receiver. I'm all in on Thielen over Jefferson. Ryan?
No, I agree. I like you, Jeremy, I like to chase value in leagues that I feel like I'm looking to win immediately. And I know in our yards per league, I took a lot of rookies, but in most of the leagues
Best of
that
luck.
It's fun, right? It's fun.
It is fun. It was a different strategy I was trying out, but no, I like to chase value too. The only thing I'm a little worried about is Thielen had 14 touchdowns last year after not having more than 9 in any season before that. So a little touchdown regression might be on his way. But like you said, he is the target in the red zone right now. And not that Jefferson can't be that. I just feel like the chemistry that Thielen and Kirk Cousins have, as long as Thielen can stay healthy and stay on the field, I think he will definitely be – he'll outperform his ADP as long as he stays healthy. We'll just say that.
Agreed.
Love it. 3 agrees. Go get Adam Thielen instead of Justin Jefferson in startups.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, like in a dynasty, like we're all running to Justin Jefferson, and we're not going to think twice about it.
Yeah. See, I'd rather take the running back there. That's my personal opinion. You know what I mean?
Like
I just feel like
in the first round.
Yeah, the second round,
Yeah,
second round, I'm taking that running back. You know what I mean? Super flex, I'm going quarterback, running back. I just feel like there's so much depth at wide receiver that, it'd be great to have Justin Jefferson, but I'd rather have Nick Chubb.
Right, but you mean between the two, we're still going to be running to him as fast as we can when we need a receiver, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to Justin's hometown team here. We're going to move on to the Chicago Bears, who I was very ecstatic with when they traded up and took Justin Fields. I like Justin Fields. He was my QB2 as far as fantasy goes. And I love the fit personally. I know there's a lot of people who don't necessarily love it, but I think that Justin Fields is going to be great in Chicago. So I'm going to start this out with this question. Matt Nagy's telling us today it's Andy Dalton, week 1. Do we get Dalton or do we get Fields? Is he lying to us? What do you think, Justin?
I think right now it honestly doesn't matter. And if I was Matt Nagy, I'd be probably saying the same thing, because just going through it, let's give Andy the shot. Like, if we're going to let him start, okay. But does he even make it to halftime of week 1? I don't know. If you look back into the beginning of last year, Nick Foles was coming in to save the day very quickly. So it's going to be a short leash. The Bears have the Bengals on the schedule for week 2. So I really feel like because of that, they're probably going to try to roll out Andy, give him the shot. It's going to blow up in their face, and Fields is going to be in by halftime up against the Rams in week 1. If you guys have been following Twitter today, people have been slamming Ramsey because of getting burned by Darnell Mooney a few times, right? That's not going to make that dude very happy. So I'm expecting Andy Dalton to be set to the fires early on. And the Bears have a very tough schedule. They need to get Fields, on the field, pun intended, I guess, or whatever, in the huddle. They need to get this guy rolling. He is not going to compete for the job. He is going to work every day to be the number 1 starter. Hell, Nick Foles is going to help him become the starter at a certain point, right? So I feel like he's going to be the starter more sooner than later, but there is zero benefit or upside for the Bears to say, hey, Fields is our guy. Right now, there's no benefit for that. If he really is the QB1 for week 1, they should not mention anything until like literally the week of the start of the season. Like, there's no benefit to say, hey, this is our guy right now, and to let teams start preparing for him. But the future is bright. I'm very excited. I hope he is the starter more sooner than later, especially because of their schedule. It's not very good this year for the Bears. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a great way to look at it. That I always live by, don't listen to what coaches say and just follow what they do. Because if they're telling you that Andy Dalton's the guy, but all of a sudden halfway through training camp, Fields starts taking snaps with the 1, there's a good chance it might end up being Fields. Ryan, who do you think helps the whole offensive scheme as far as fantasy goes? Do you think Fields is the better option or Andy Dalton?
No, I feel like it's got to be Fields. He has higher rushing upside. You can do a little bit more with him in the playbook. The problem with this is that, like Justin said, their schedule is tough to start the year. They start off the Rams, the Bengals, which don't really scare you, but then they had the Browns as well with that revamped defense. So those 3 games, if I was the head coach, which obviously I'm not, and they're much smarter than I am, but I wouldn't want
not Nagy. I promise.
I wouldn't want my rookie quarterback to start off against that first 3 schedule. Like, the Browns and the Rams alone are probably going to be 2 of the top 5 defenses in the league this season. I'm not 100% sure you want to throw him to the Wolves like that. But I've heard that he that Justin Fields is already showing people, like wide receivers at voluntary OTAs, running the wrong routes, things like that. He's already pulling them aside saying, hey, this is what you should do next time. So he's grasping onto the playbook. He's showing good leadership. So if he can show in training camp and things like that, that he can go out there and lead and perform well against their own defense, which shouldn't be terrible either. I mean, he's got Khalil Mack on the opposite side of him. If he can mess around with him for a little while and escape him and things like that, I feel like they'd be a little bit more confident throwing him into the Wolves against the Rams. But me personally, I would rather let him sit for a couple weeks just to get the jitters off, just to really be ready, and then let him start against the Lions in week 4.
Yeah, I personally have no problem with that as a fan and as a Fields advocate. I'm cool with it. I just also see us going 0-3 still. With
I think whether it's Dalton or Fields, I feel like you might be 1-2. I think the Bengals could be a beatable team. It's going to be tough because the Bengals with Burrow and what they added, that offense is going to be tough to stop. But they still don't have a defense to stop the opposing offense. So that could be a good week 2 game. I mean, if you do have Fields out there, I mean, that could be even Dalton. I mean, that could be a pretty interesting game personally.
To Ryan's point really quick about the rushing, I don't feel like Fields will be a specific like rushing quarterback. I just feel that when the opportunity is going to present itself, he's going to run. And if you're asking us like, who's going to be more valuable to the team in just football purposes, his ability with his legs are going to move the chains. Kyler Murray, he took 48 sacks his rookie season and still rushed for over 500 yards as a rookie. So if we can get 450 plus out of Fields as just a guy that can just give you that extra layer, that can make defenses just, question you a little bit more, not take as many liberties on a young quarterback, he could actually be more productive just playing it safe. They've got a lot of running backs. We're going to get into that here in a minute, but I feel like they have a lot of weapons that they can still protect Fields even early on.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree more with Justin too than Ryan, but I think that for me, when I watched Justin Fields, this is going to sound really weird because nobody likes Tyrod Taylor, but it reminded me a lot of Tyrod Taylor's mindset when he plays the game. He isn't out there looking to run, and neither is Tyrod. Both are very effective runners of the football and more scramblers, but both of them do the same thing. They're both looking to get that ball out and get it out to the playmakers. So I feel like he has that less of the Lamar. Like, I feel like Lamar, yes, he does look, but like Lamar wants to run. Like, he's a playmaker. He wants to run. He wants to make things happen with his legs quicker than I think he wants to pass. And that could just be like a weapons issue. I don't want to say that totally yet. Obviously, we'll get to that this year. Obviously, they added weapons at the receiver core, but it just reminded me a lot watching him of Tyrod Taylor. Obviously, we got to see him here with the Bills for a while, so I saw him regularly. But it just reminded me a lot. He's obviously better. I think he's a better Tyrod Taylor. So I don't think he's going to become Tyrod Taylor. I just feel like they have a similar style of play and like when they would like to rush or not. But
I have to throw it out there. I don't think Fields is a run first guy by any means. I do believe that he is a pass first guy. Wait, what?
I was just I agree with you that he's not the run first guy, but he is just a quarterback that can run.
Oh yeah, and they improved their offensive line. They took Tevin Jenkins in the second round, I believe, and they took another guard in the 5th round. So their offensive line should be better. So he's not going to have to scramble as often. So he will be able to sit back in the pocket a little bit, hit guys like Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney and Dez Newsome if he gets on the field. Like he's going to have the option to just sit there in the pocket a little bit longer than maybe Andy Dalton would, because if it play breaks down, he just gives you that extra element to break free if he needs to.
I want to ask you guys really quick, and I don't know if I should be buying into this, but I feel like a lot of fans are the comps between Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson because of the fact that all 3 of these guys, Fields, Wilson, and Kyler, they all played baseball, they all played shortstop. And a lot of people just say like the coordination, the speed that's kind of added to your game and just being like a multifaceted athlete. Do you guys buy into that at all? Like that those comps are even relatable, or is it just kind of like hogwash, just selling articles, clicks?
I mean, I like the multi-athlete thing. And I definitely think that the shortstop is a great way to look at it. I agree. I think that like shortstop is a hard position to play in baseball. I played baseball growing up and you have to cover a lot of the infield, I guess you could say. And I think that it helps them with like arm angles and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know if you could really say like that's like the comp, like a good way to go with it. Like, I think that he's going to be this good because they all did the same thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's obviously other baseball. There's a lot of these quarterbacks probably played baseball at some point. You know what I mean? Like Patrick Mahomes did the same thing. You know what I mean? Like they all probably did. I mean, anybody who has a strong arm, I'm sure played baseball. So. I don't know. I mean, it could be. I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about. You know what I mean? Like if he pans out in a similar way that those guys do, it definitely would be something that I'd want to like start looking into more than I have recently. So, Ryan?
No, I think with the shortstop thing, I mean, if anybody's played shortstop before, you got to have quick reaction. You got to be able to process things quickly. You got to be able to make a play and make a decision quickly when a ball runs up on you. And you're kind of the leader of the infield, so you got to have leadership skills. You got to be able to have the confidence to play the position. I mean, it's not an easy position to play because you're constantly getting the ball hit at you 95% of the time. So, I don't think it relates to football as much as the article written worth. But I mean, I could see the mental aspect behind it relating to football. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the aforementioned running back room. David Montgomery finished running back 4 in PPR. Is this real or is it pretend?
It's real, in my opinion. And then kind of the points that Ryan brought up with the offensive line, Tevin Jenkins, we drafted Larry Borum in the 5th round. I think that he will he's going to be a starter more sooner than later. I think he's behind Alex Bars on the depth chart, who is just kind of a piece. He's just kind of there. And I see Borum kind of, eclipsing him at some point, maybe not to start the year, but I feel like that offensive line got improved very much so over the second half of last year. And it's just going to kind of lead into this year. Obviously the Jenkins ad is big. And yeah, I feel like with all the passing weapons that they have, if they go like really spread heavy, I do feel like that's going to be a real thing. I also could see some of those guys eating into the workload, but not the rushing attempts, just kind of like pass catching and PPR value. But I do see him getting a lot of volume this year. So yeah, I'm buying in on it. I'm top 5. It sounds rich, but as a Bears fan, I'm banging the drum. I just drafted him in a 20-team Empire League in the 2nd round. So I'm all in.
Yeah, and I mean, after their bye, which was week 11, I mean, he finished with 26, 27, 55, 30, 20, and 28 in PPR leagues. So, I mean, David Montgomery, when he was coming out, he was one of the top draft picks in rookie picks. So it's tough for me with David Montgomery because I don't know if something just clicked. I don't know if the offense just was better or he just works purely on the volume, obviously with not having Cohen there. But I just feel like at the end of the year, he just fed on like an easy strength of schedule on the defenses. So I just feel like top 5 is very rich. I think he's definitely possibly a running back 1. I think he might be real borderline there. I just think with guys like Barkley and CMC coming back, and then obviously the increase with Jonathan Taylor is probably going to be up there. I think J.K. Dobbins has a shot to reach that. I think Antonio Gibson, if he stays healthy, is definitely reachable. I think Cam Akers. So I think there's a lot of these guys that are kind of climbing that I think are a little bit more talented than David Montgomery. So for me, I definitely am not saying he's a top 5 running back again this year, but I'm definitely holding on to him. So Ryan, after David Montgomery, we have Tarik Cohen, Khalil Herbert, who they just drafted, and Damian Williams. Are any of these guys worth rostering, or what do we think they're going to produce?
I mean, I think Tarik Cohen is probably definitely worth rostering for sure. I mean, he got hurt last season, but made the Pro Bowl in 2018. He 203 catches, 1,500 yards, and 3 fully healthy seasons for him. I mean, he's their PPR receiving threat for them. So I think that's where Montgomery's going to take the biggest hit because they didn't have that receiving back last season, where he's not going to have nearly the target share that he had last year because of Cohen coming back. So I do like Khalil Herbert, but they took him in the 5th or 6th round, something like that. But he was a 5th-year senior. I mean, what can you really expect from him as a 5th round pick? But Damian Williams is a little interesting. Obviously, he opted out last season, and then from Kansas City, and then signed over in Chicago. So they don't bring those guys in if they are willing to give him a workhorse type load. You know what I mean? I feel like you got to have that to be in the top 12 running back discussion outside of guys like Dobbins because they were in such a run-heavy offense. And the Bears were actually sixth most pass-happy offense in the league last season. So it's just one of those things where, like you said, do you bank it on the week's defensive schedule they had last season? And that's why he was just – I mean, that 55-point game probably put him over the top for fantasy purposes. So, I mean, guys like JT, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, Barkley will be back, CMC will be back. Guys like that will kind of have to nudge guys like David Montgomery down that are borderline wide receiver or running back ones. But can he get there? Obviously, he can get there because he's already done it. But this season, he might just have a little bit more competition for touches with Cohen coming back, Damian Williams signing. Maybe they run to Herbert a little bit. We'll just have to see how he does in OTAs and training camps, things like that. So.
Well, I think with the extra game this year, he said it's literally almost identical. 247 rush attempts last year, 242 the year prior, but he only started 8 games 2 years ago. Last year it was 14. He missed, I think, just 1 game, but we're getting an extra game this year. He rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. I'm expecting more yardage and more touchdowns. That's where I'm going. He could easily hit 300 touches if he stays healthy all 17 games.
Yeah, I think aside from, like, not to, like, say you're wrong, Ryan, but I think, like, the Williams ad to me just screams, like, so they had Cohen go down, for example, and then Montgomery did get hurt. And, like, they were walking out like Ryan Nall. So I think, like,
Tavius Pierce.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like Williams might not actually eat in as much as we think. Like, I think people want to say that. Like, they're like, oh, David Montgomery isn't good enough. So, like, see, they're adding all these guys. But I feel like Damian Williams is like an insurance policy. I think if Montgomery goes down, Williams becomes that lead guy. I think he's more that way. And I think Herbert's the backup for Cohen. So, and I agree. I like Herbert, and it's tough because I feel like Cohen's their lead PPR, like their lead passing back, and then Herbert's probably behind him. And Herbert's like up there in age, being that 5th-year senior. So I don't know, like, if he's really worth owning. I mean, what do you think, Justin? Do you think Herbert's worth owning?
And Dynasty.
Like, in Dynasty, like, so. You think he's...
I don't think so in redraft. Like, well, yeah, I mean, because you're going to be able to get him for value in Dynasty because of how full the room is. So why not take a flyer on him? He's obviously shown that he can be successful at the position. And Tarik Cohen, he's going to be coming up on contract terms here pretty soon. Williams, he's just kind of a one-off, for a year, maybe 2 at the most. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be used as much as people believe. Just kind of has that connection with Nagy, coming back from Kansas City. He did take the year off. I think that's going to also play a role into it. We got to see what we're going to get out of him. I'm sure he was staying conditioned and everything, but a year off of football is still a year off of football, and you got to keep getting hit, man. You don't want to see any of that like timidness or anything like that. He was very successful with Kansas City, obviously, but that's a completely different playbook, different weapons. I just kind of see him as being insurance, kind of like you mentioned.
Let's move on to that wide receiver room that I think is actually kind of interesting. I want to see how this plays out. I mean, you have the obvious Allen Robinson, top 10, just consistent. He's Mr. Consistent with bad quarterbacks. And I think the argument can definitely be made that Fields, even Dalton possibly, could be like the best quarterback that he's had. So now from outside of him, you have Darnell Mooney, who looked impressive last year, and there's the videos that you mentioned, Justin, where he's burning guys and he's getting missed deep. But then it gets even more interesting to me. Like, you have a high round draft pick in Anthony Miller, and then you have who they added this year, who I think is kind of like a sleeper, which is Daz Newsome. So those 4 are going to probably make out the top 4. Do you think, Justin?
You think
or
so?
Do you think?
Oh my gosh, this room is so deep, man. We didn't mention Damiere Byrd, Marquise Goodwin. Riley Ridley is still like every Bears fan's dream, right?
There?
Yeah,
I had to cut him. I had to cut him. I'm sorry.
He's not Kevin White because of like the draft capital, because he was drafted later, but he's becoming the Chicago's new Kevin White, because everyone's just, every year I have to hear it from my friends and Bears fans alike, like, oh, he's going to make a push this year. It's going to be it. Like, yeah, Calvin's brother, cousin, whatever he is. He ain't Calvin. Get over it. Like, come on, Daz right now, I'm seeing him at number 9 behind Chris Lacey, whoever the heck that is. I don't even know who that dude is. I not drafted Daz, but I picked him up off of waivers actually in our dynasty league, our startup, Jeremy. So I like Daz. I'm in on him, but he's behind so many established guys. And I guess we just kind of have to ask ourselves, like, does Damiere Byrd make this roster? Does Marquise Goodwin make this roster? Do they trade Anthony Miller, who I'm kind of just, go ahead, do it. Get something back because we're so deep. Like, what do we do with all these guys? Are we running a spread offense here? Like, what's going to happen?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just really, I don't know.
I like Daz from that room. Oh, I love Daz. I hope that he's a top 4 guy. It's just with all these established players, how is he going to work in? He's going to have to really overwork these guys for snaps.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I think Goodwin is not gonna. I don't think he's gonna. Who knows? I just don't think that he's much. I think he take last year off. He's another one that I think that personally, I think the COVID opt-out guys are gonna have a struggle making it back into the league. At least as like a starting role. So I'm not super high on Goodwin. I definitely think Daz Newsome could beat him out because Newsome looked impressive at UNC. And then as far as, I mean, Damiere Byrd had a pretty good run last year, right, with the Patriots, I think.
This Cam, what do you expect from him?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. For what he had and what he used, I mean, he was pretty impressive. So, I mean, he could possibly be up in there. But, I mean, of those, who are you taking? Is it Darnell Mooney, obviously? Is that the given? And then...
That's it. I cut it off after that.
Yeah, and then I mean for free, like you said, I think for free, like the 5th round in there, I'm taking a flyer on Daz Newsome. I think just in Dynasty because I think he's got that option. But I think, like you said, Anthony Miller, I'd like to see moved. I think he needs a change of scenery if he's ever going to be fantasy relevant. So, Ryan, outside of that, who are you taking outside of Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney? Any of them, or are you good?
I mean, I'm willing to take a dart throw on Newsome just because he could potentially be the starting slot receiver. But like Justin said, I mean, that receiving core is a lot deeper than people probably think. I don't think they realize the additions that they made in the offseason. So if he can be the starting slot receiver, obviously, yeah, he's worth a dart throw because you want anybody that's going to be on the field on a consistent basis. So, and maybe Fields, or if it's Dalton that starts for the majority of the games, which I don't think, but if one of them falls in love with him, then you just never really. I mean, obviously, Allen Robinson is going to be the alpha there. He's the alpha no matter where he goes. But if you can get, I don't know, with this extra season, if you can get 75, 80, 90 targets out of that slot position, then that's money for the 5th round of your rookie draft. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just got to know that he's going to be the guy. We got to get closer.
Yeah. I agree. So let's move on to Cole Kmet. I think everybody is getting pretty amped about Cole Kmet, and I want to hear it from Justin first. Should the hype be worth it here with Cole Kmet, or are we going to be disappointed in year 2?
No, you'll be satisfied. He's going to take the sophomore plunge forward. He was already doing it at the end of last year. He was starting to out snap, Jimmy Graham at a certain point. Obviously, Graham is there, but he's a mirror of what he was. He's only, receiving relevant. He's not a blocking guy. Cole can do both. He's got that big body, that big wide frame. He's going to be a big target for either of those guys, Dalton or Fields. I'm expecting big things from him early on.
I like it. I mean, I don't know. I was never a huge Cole Kmet guy, but do you think Andy Dalton or Justin Fields improves Kmet? Which one would you prefer fantasy-wise for Kmet? Fields. All right, Ryan.
Just because of the play action, like once he gets out of the pocket and Cole kind of slips off of some of those block assignments, kind of those slip routes, I think it's going to be beautiful. It'll be a nice little chain mover combination.
Do we think Kmet can make top 12?
Yeah, I do.
Nice. I like it. I'm not as high on Kmet. I don't know if it's just because I think it's tough. I feel like you could just say any of these tight ends can make top 12, so it's kind of hard for me to say that. But I think he's kind of more borderline. I think he's like top 15.
You don't have to do much to make the top 12. You don't have to do much.
Yeah. And I think that's what we've proved this whole episode. I feel like these tight ends are kind of in there. You got Cole Kmet, Irv Smith, and then Tunion, who did that this year, came out of nowhere, made top 5. And then TJ Hawkinson, who probably has the better draft capital, but again, was another guy that kind of just is touchdown dependent. So Ryan, how do you feel about Cole Kmet?
I actually really like Cole Kmet. I've got a couple shares of him in dynasty leagues right now. The thing that I was really looking into the episode here, he started out the season really slow. Like, he was not getting on the field very often, but then weeks 11 through 17, he was on the field for 84% of the snaps. So once he got acclimated with the NFL, once he got used to the playbook, once he got used to the speed and everything like that everybody seemed to struggle with, especially from the tight end position, he was on the field and didn't produce so much in the passing game, but maybe we can chalk that up to Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. But
a lot we can for those.
He's actually performed really well as a blocker, so I think that's part of the reason why he got on the field so often. I don't think Jimmy Graham is that much of anything as a blocker. So is Jimmy still on the roster?
Yes.
He's like 34, I believe he's still on the roster. Yeah. So that might hurt his chances to get into that tight end one discussion, but I feel like I don't know Jimmy's contract, but I feel like they probably have an out on him if they feel like Kmet is just the guy and they're really confident in his ability to do what they need him to do. So, like you said, I mean, I feel like we can agree that Hawkinson's probably the only guaranteed lock to be top 10. Mm-hmm. But these other guys all have the potential to be if they get a certain role in the offense. So I do like Cole Kmet. I do like Cole Kmet. Like I said, I got a couple of shares of him in dynasty leagues. He's probably going to be a starter in one of my tight end superflex leagues. So he's just one of those guys that you just got to wait and see, just because he's so young. But getting on the field so often late in the season last season was really encouraging to see when I was looking up stuff for tonight.
And his draft stock is just not expensive. You can get him in, like, I'm looking at round 15. You don't have to get him as your first tight end. You could pair him with someone like, Kyle Pitts in redraft, or a Noah Fant or a Dallas Goedert, and you're being risk adverse still. You'll have that upside. If he hits, you can move one of those tight ends you drafted ahead of him. Or if you just are really in on him, like me, you can just fade tight end into literally round 15 or 13, whatever it is.
Exactly what I did.
Yeah, so fantastic. I mean, right now DLF has in a superflex startup Cole Kmet's 169, tight end 21, and then
it's free.
For example, hold on, I just saw it. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Irv Smith is tight end 12 at 132. So that's what, about three rounds later, almost.
Mm-hmm. Give me Kmet.
So
and to Ryan's point too about the snap percentages, you just saw that sophomore plunge start early. They gave him more opportunity as the year went on, and for a guy that gets drafted in the first round as a tight end, that is 1,000% what you want to see, is just that little bit of progression and reliability in year one, which most people don't expect from a tight end.
Yeah,
or rookie tight end. I'm sorry.
I like it. So obviously I'm the one who's the lowest, but I mean I can get it. I mean I agree with everything you guys are saying. So you're kind of slowly convincing me to be way higher on Cole Kmet than I am. So, and I think I might just send that Irv Smith for Cole Kmet trade somewhere. I'm sure I have some Irv Smith shares, so we'll see if it works.
Do it.
But that's going to conclude our show today. Ran it a little long again, but I just want to say real quick, thank you again, Justin, for being on. And why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and whatever you got going on quick for anybody who joined us late.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Hizzy, to the Hizzy.com, to the Hizzy on Twitter, we're Take It to the Hizzy Fantasy Sports. We do, football on Sundays. Monday nights we're doing hockey. Wednesday we're doing basketball, talking all fantasy and gambling alike. We do fight previews for every big UFC card. We just got done with 262. We'll be moving on to 263 here pretty soon. We just have a lot of fun. We go live all the time, talking picks, talking fantasy. Come stop in whenever you like.
Yeah, I mean, if you pretty much like any type of sport, I mean, To the Hizzy is definitely something you definitely want to check out. They got everything, and I love your guys' content. So
no baseball.
Does that exist?
We'll get there. We'll get there someday.
Baseball's hard, man. I played baseball for a long time, but I still struggle to watch it. It's just too. It's too much. It's kind of like fantasy hockey. Played hockey for a while, and they're hard to follow. You're just like.
Yeah. Oh, you got to be in it, man. You got to be in it. Yeah. I took an 8th place team to the championship this year. It was rough. Nice. It was a long haul, but I made it.
Yeah, we redrafted this year in our dynasty league for hockey, and I didn't really pay attention and managed to somehow make the playoffs. I don't
mess with that. It's dynasty hockey. Damn.
It takes a lot of work. And yeah, I don't know. But anyways, thank you for having it, or thanks for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And Ryan, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mackey_FFB. Just want to say thanks again, Justin, for stopping on. Appreciate it. Don't forget to go download the King Fantasy Sports draft kit there. Don't forget the yards per app as well, because a lot of stuff going on there. We added some more stuff to the team profiles over there, so make sure you go check that out.
Yeah, for sure. And you can find me, Jeremy, at PopesFFH, and you can find any of my writing over at Yards Per and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And until next week, take care, guys.